I didn't see this coming. I said a few weeks ago, even started planning, maybe it was 2 months ago, a sermon series on Stronger on the Other Side, thinking the big issue right now is that we're all in lockdown. How can we be stronger on the other side? And I didn't see it coming. I didn't see the racism. I didn't see the protests. I didn't see what's happening in our world right now. Someone even posted on Facebook recently, they said, wow, I haven't seen anything in my news feed on coronavirus for 3 days. The world keeps changing, doesn't it? And I didn't see it coming, and maybe I didn't want to see it coming. I have to admit, I don't want to talk about this. I don't want to talk about racism. I don't want to talk about what's happening in our world right now because I want you to like me. And our world's so divided that it's so easy to get misunderstood. But I have to talk about this because this is what's going on in our world right now. Yeah, I didn't see this coming. I didn't want to see it. I didn't want to watch the video of the murder of George Floyd. But I did. I didn't want to see the pictures and videos of all the protests, of all the pain. But I had to. And I really don't want to talk about this right now. I don't want to believe that we even have a racism problem. I remember in high school, I was in youth group, and our youth leader said, tonight we're going to talk about racism. And I think we did 3 weeks in a row talking about racism. And I said to our youth leader, why are we talking about this? Racism is a thing that you guys dealt with years ago. That's not a problem anymore. And that's really easy for me to say as a white kid. But I've heard the stories. Over this past week, I've listened to story after story after story of people of color who grew up and lived or raised children in this community. And I've heard their stories. And I'm telling you, we have a racism problem. And I don't want to talk about this. But we have to talk about this. If you're like me, you want to say, isn't it really that it's just a few bad individuals? Just a few bad individuals, and there will always be a few bad individuals who do bad things. And isn't it enough that the officers involved in this murder, that they were arrested, and they're going to be facing charges? Isn't that enough? But it's not about those officers. It's not about this one incident. It's not about a few bad individuals. It's about a problem that we have in our world today called racism. And you're part of it, and I'm part of it. That's why we have to talk about it today. It's not just a few bad individuals. It's something bigger. It's called sin. And it's in me, and it's in you, and it's in this world. Martin Luther King Jr. said, a threat to justice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere, and that's the truth. And when I allow injustice, it affects all of us. I want to say thank you to people of color who've shared their stories with me over these past few weeks. You've opened my eyes. You've helped me to see. You've helped me to see the ways that I'm part of the problem in my words, in my actions, but also in my silence, in my thoughts. You've told me your stories, and you've invited me to reflect on mine. I want to say thank you. Because even though I don't want to see how I'm part of the problem, you've helped me see that I am. You've given me space to admit to myself that I have racist thoughts. That it comes out in ways that I don't even expect. when you've told me your stories of how you succeeded in career or in college, someone said, you only got in here, you only got this position because of the color of your skin. You don't really deserve it. And you made me realize I've thought that. You talk about how when you're driving down the road, people don't trust you. You could get pulled over for the color of your skin. Or you go into a store and people assume you're shoplifting. The store employees will follow you more than they would a white person. They assume you're going to do wrong. And you reminded me of the ways that when I'm in my car and a person of color pulls up alongside of me in their car, I'm more likely to lock my door than I am if there's a white person. Why is that? I don't even know. I don't understand this racism in me, and I know it's there, and I am sorry, and I am working to change it. And I don't want to just not be racist. I want to be against racism. I want to be anti-racist. Thank you for showing me. Thank you for teaching me. Thank you for telling me your stories. And I hope that you continue to tell me your stories so that I know how I can live differently. I hate admitting this. I hate admitting this, and I feel ashamed and I feel afraid. I feel afraid that I'm going to add more pain by admitting the evil thoughts that I've had. But to be honest with you, it goes beyond my evil thoughts. It goes beyond my actions. Maybe the worst thing I've done is my silence. My silence when I see someone harming a person of color and I do nothing. My silence when I notice bullying, or I notice hurtful words, or even I notice terrible things that my friends say on Facebook that dismiss the pain that you're going through. And I don't do anything. I don't stick up for you. You've told me the story of 8 people sitting together, and 3 of them are harassing a person of color. But the worst part is the 5 people who stay with them, who don't do anything. Or who later say, oh, it's so terrible what they said, but they never stood up for you. And I wonder how many times have I been one of those 5 people who didn't do anything, but that's the point. I didn't do anything. And I'm sorry. Have you heard the story of Cain and Abel? The story begins with God creating the world. He creates the world and he makes it good. Very, very good. And he puts people in this world. And you see the story of Adam and Eve, and God creates them and loves them and works with them to take care of his good and beautiful world. And then Adam and Eve turn from God. They say, no, we're going to live our own lives, not following you. We're going to do whatever we want to do. And if we stop the story there, we miss part of the message. Because the story continues to their kids, Cain and Abel, these 2 sons. And they have a rift. They had an argument. And every time I've heard this story before, I got caught up in thinking about their argument and their rift and that thing that they were fighting about. And I missed it. So please, I'm asking you, don't miss it. Cain and Abel had this argument where Cain was really mad at Abel. And God came to Cain and said, Cain, sin is crouching at the door. Sin is ready. Will you overcome it? Will you master it? Or will it master you? And so often we just miss this idea that sin is actually at our door. We try to pretend like it's not even going to affect us. But it's there. Will we master it? And the story goes on that Cain doesn't master it. Cain goes, he brings his brother out into a field and kills him. And God comes to Cain again and says, "What have you done?" He says, "Where is your brother?" And Cain says, "What am I, my brother's keeper? Am I responsible for my brother's well-being? Isn't that the point?" Yes. Yes, you are. You're responsible for your brothers and sisters' well-being, for people. You're responsible for what happens in this world, for people near you and around you and in this world, and people who look like you and people who don't look the same as you. Because you know what? You know what? God says to Cain, your brother's Abel's blood cries out to me. And did you know our blood is the same color? No matter the color of our skin, our blood is the same color and it cries out to God. You've watched the news stories, just like I have. You've seen the protests that have turned into riots. You've seen it, and we know, you know and I know, not to trust what we see in the media. We can't trust something just because we saw it on TV or on social media. It sometimes looks like all the protesters are rioters, but we know it's a small portion of them. It's just a few of them, but they get all the news because it makes for really interesting news. The looters, the rioters, they're hurting the cause. There's a difference between rioting and protesting. The protesters have a cause. The rioters are hurting that cause. We all know looting is wrong. Many of the rioters, they just want a free TV. But the protesters are there for a purpose. But I have to admit to you, when I see the rioting, I see another side of it too. I see another side of it where there's a righteous anger. There's an anger that comes from a people that have been hurt for years and no one's listened to them. And they're tired of crying out for justice and being ignored. For how long have people of color suffered? For how long have people of color suffered at the hands of white people while Christians stayed silent? People of color have been crying out for this justice, and we haven't given the listening ear. In fact, we've even as Christians, we've tried to silence their voices. We say that's the wrong kind of protest. They hold up signs saying, "I can't breathe," and we say, we don't want to see that. They take a knee at a football game, and we say, "How dare you?" And I understand it. I understand the concern of, we're singing the national anthem that speaks of freedom that people have fought and died for. And so I understand the outrage of, how could someone disrespect that sacrifice that someone made? We never want to forget that sacrifice. But I've also listened to people of color as they've described the idea of taking a knee at a game, taking a knee during the anthem. And they say people have sacrificed and fought and given their lives. They have bled so that we could have freedom. And then people at home have taken that freedom away. They'd say the injustice, the racism in our nation desecrates the flag. That the injustices and the racism that we're seeing in America today means that those people who fought and died for freedom fought in vain, because that freedom's not being lived. What people of color tell me is that it's not about disrespecting the flag, it's about respecting what people fought for and making that a reality in our world today. Please don't make this about politics. This is not about politics. This is about people. The rioting is wrong. I'll tell you that. I think everyone would tell you that. But I would also tell you that I caused the rioting. Because when someone took a knee as a peaceful way of saying there's something wrong here, as a way of crying out for justice, I said, am I my brother's keeper? And I didn't speak up. I didn't say there's injustice here. I didn't say we need to stand up against racism. I was silent. I caused the riots. 1 John 1 verses 8 to 9 says these words that fit so much for what we're looking at today. They say, if we say we do not sin, we deceive ourselves, and the truth is not in us. But if we confess our sin, God will forgive and cleanse us. I don't love confessing my sin. It's painful for me to confess my sin. But if I claim that I don't have sin, I'm just deceiving myself. I'm lying to myself. The truth is I've sinned. The truth is I haven't lived up to what it means to be a follower of Jesus. And I trust in Jesus to cleanse me, to purify me, to forgive me, and to set me on a new path.